Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the ACCESS.SPACE Alliance Conference. We are starting this today, a big day. The whole day will be full of panels, and we'll have a couple of breaks as well in the middle. We're going to be starting with the first keynote from Australia in a few minutes. Before we do that, we will present the ACCESS.SPACE Alliance. So we have three sponsors which have voluntarily provided sponsorship for the conference: Surrey, Satellite, and Leaf Space and New Space Capital. I just wanted to remind the conference of that. And I would like to do a small introduction of the Space Alliance. The executive team of the ACCESS.SPACE Alliance are Betty, Bonnardel, myself, and Christian van der Roop. And we founded a company basically in 2019. And we are actively pursuing activities for the ACCESS.SPACE Alliance and the members. The ACCESS.SPACE Alliance is a organization working on a non-for-profit basis. We are uniting and representing the small satellite sector. We now started the new membership from January this year. We had a prior membership on a free basis. Now we are up and running on a fee basis, and we started that from January. We have now more than 50 companies and universities, as well as space agencies, who are become members of the ACCESS.SPACE Alliance. We formed in 2019, as I said earlier. Our first conference was in July of that year at the European Space Agency Harwell Center, kindly offered to us from ESA. And we're here on a mission to create an environment that allows members to network and also to have their voice in many different aspects, including regulatory, legal aspects, technical, and we're here to lobby for them if need to be. Our offices are in France, UK, Germany, and Belgium, and we have the different representatives of the ACCESS.SPACE Alliance working from those countries. And we have so far, in fact, started last year with creating committees. So we have a Free Space Optical Communications Committee, we have a Regulatory and Space Policy Committee, a Lunar Deployment Committee, and a Finance Committee as well. And other committees will be done soon. If you require more information on the joining of the Alliance, as well as being part of those committees, just write to myself or look at our website, www.access.space. We have at the conference more than 587 registered people so far this morning, when I checked, for more than 63 different countries. In terms of geographical distribution, you can see from this chart that, of course, majority here from Europe, but there are many also from other continents as well. We will now start the conference, and I would like maybe Betty to say a couple of words before we start.
I would like to welcome everyone. I'm very pleased to be here and very pleased to be with you and getting your interest and support. It's fantastic. So without further ado, I think Adam is waiting. So let's get him. He's got an exciting presentation.
Perfect. I'm going to stop this presentation now, and I'm going to introduce Adam first. So I need to open up my lineup document with. So let me introduce Adam. Thank you, Betty. Thank you so much for the intro. So Adam is the Executive Director of Strategy and Policy at the Australian Space Agency, commencing in the role when agency launched operations in July 2018. Adam has a responsibility for civil space policy matters, as well as development and implementation of the agency's investments plan and strategy to grow and transform Australia's space industry. Adam has extensive industry policy and program experience in the defence, aerospace sectors, working in a range of roles for the Australian government in the Department of Industry, Innovation and Science. And before joining the department in 2009, Adam worked in several roles in the private sector in Australia and abroad. He has worked in the development of the observatory systems for optical astronomy, laser ranging, as well as in development of military, industrial, and consumer products. Adam, welcome to the ACCESS.SPACE Alliance conference. Thank you to be with us. You can tell us about yourself and the Australian Space Agency. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tony, and thanks for the opportunity to present to this incredible group of people. This has been this is a fantastic opportunity because the ACCESS.SPACE Alliance, of course, predominantly representing smaller organisations, startups, and in some ways very similar to the Australian Space Agency ourselves. So I hope that my presentation resonates for some of you. I'll talk for a little while, and then I'll have hopefully be able to answer some questions at the end. And also very much looking forward to being on the Space Agency's panel this afternoon, where I'll sort of drill into a bit more detail. Tony, can I ask you for you to start the presentation, please? So I'll start anyway. One of the things that we do traditionally in Australia is to recognise the traditional owners of the land on which we meet. I know we've got 11 Australians potentially joining the conference or registered to join anyway, so that they'll understand this. I'm standing today in the Australian Capital Territory in Canberra, which is the home of the Ngunnawal people. And I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and their ongoing connection to the land, the waters, and in our context, the sky. I guess the groundings of the Australian Space Agency, we're very proud to connect to Australia's first people, and you'll see our logo up here behind me. And here we go. When the presentation comes up, you'll get to see this. Just straight through to the next slide, please. And we're very proud to recognise Australia's first people in our logo. And you'll see that our identity is very much made up of some of our Indigenous stories that are represented from Indigenous nations here in Australia. And so you can see the makeup of the different constellations and how they contribute to our agency. And this is how, I guess, we work together to have a bit of a national approach and bring together Australia's new space sector. Next slide, please. So while the Australia Space Agency is new, we're only coming up to our third year of operations. We do have a deep history in space, and we work very closely with NASA and ESA and its predecessor organisations. You'll see here some, on the left there's some rocket launching from Woomera, the Honeysuckle Creek and Parkes deep space tracking stations that supported the Apollo missions. But these were operated largely by other nations. Australia's space program, of course, participated at Woomera. Next slide, please, Tony. And I'd especially like to recognise the connection with the UK. Of course, Tony's based in the UK, and while I'm talking here to a global audience, it particularly resonated with me. I found out earlier this week that we're coming up to the 50 years anniversary of the launch of Prospero, which is still the UK's only satellite to be launched on a UK-built rocket, and it was launched from Australia. So it'll be 50 years ago this October. I think that there's kind of a great symmetry for that. And while the story of that program is that it was terminated shortly after the launch of this rocket, the UK Space Agency and the UK space community has gone on to deliver incredible things. Next slide, please. And I think what's important here to recognise is the new space paradigm, and for the people in this conference, it really does mean that that small actors are having the opportunity to participate in space. When Australia first commenced our space activities, we were the third nation to launch our own satellites into space from our own territory, or maybe, sorry, the fourth, I think it was. And so during the Cold War, very much the most powerful nations were doing space activities. But now, as you know, things are really different. I really like this slide from Bryce when they publish an annual report on the launch trends, and I think if you look at the launch trends for small satellites over the past decade, and I think for those of you that are paying attention, the 2020 here will be particularly interesting, and you'll see that bar is obviously going to be much larger, largely attributable, of course, to SpaceX and other actors like that. But the increased accessibility of space, and for smaller organisations to increasingly add value in their particular niche of expertise. And that really is the interest here, and certainly that's what's of interest for Australia. How do we gather the expertise of the smaller actors, the universities, the startups, the smaller businesses, and uplift them so that they're on a sustainable footing to do what they do best and grow the space economy. The next slide, please. The Australian Space Agency was founded in 2018 with a slightly different mandate to other space agencies. You can see on the screen there our purpose. And while you think about the classic space agencies having a very, very clear space science and space exploration mandate, in some ways very, very similar to our friends in the UK Space Agency, and have a very clear economic mandate, in this case, to triple the size of Australia's space economy and add 20,000 jobs to the sector between or out to 2030. On the face of it, that seems like a really significant challenge in the size of an Australian economy. We're only about 20 million people, much smaller than a lot of the other nations in which some colleagues on this conference live. So I guess we're cognizant of that. Especially in consideration of the competition with other sectors that are emerging, things like critical technologies, IT technologies, things like quantum cryptography and cybersecurity and other aspects that are rapidly expanding globally. But we've got a bit of a plan for that. So next slide, please, Tony. One of the first things that we did following the establishment of the agency was get a clear mandate from government on what it is that they wanted us to do. So you can see that our responsibility is there. Our goal is to draw together what is a disparate space economy in Australia and to unify it and to lead the growth of the civil space sector. So next slide, please. So organising government was the first part, but providing a vision for the Australian space sector was the next important thing. So one of the first things we did following the foundation of the agency was to develop a civil space strategy. And the government released this in the beginning of 2019. And this really does set our 10-year vision for the growth of the sector. It's really built on 4 pillars: to open doors internationally, and picking up on our sort of unifying message on the last slide, we do know that we need to have better engagement with international agencies and international actors in space. And the establishment of the agency has been fantastic for that. We've signed 16 statements of strategic intent, a whole range of MOUs with space agencies abroad, including European Space Agency, UK Space Agency, NASA, and others. So that's the first part. How do we get more engaged in the global space economy? The second part is increasing our national capability. For many years, Australia didn't have a unified purpose in space. And so that meant that the way that space activities were developed in our nation were largely on an ad hoc basis and quite targeted at specific outcomes. Our intent with the strategy is to actually provide a unified vision, set some priorities, and uplift our national capability and fill those gaps. To be clear, we're not aiming to compete with everybody. Nations that have got existing and powerful space capability, they're very much constrained by their legacy. And like the small companies on this conference, we really want to be able to run between the feet of giants in this context. And so we want to look to the next generation of technologies, the next generation of capabilities, and focus on those things that we can bring strength and add value rather than competing with established actors. The next piece about being responsible is ensuring that Australia is a responsible actor in space. We're a contributor to, we're a signatory of the 5 space treaties at the UN, and we want to establish an environment, a culture, as well as a regulatory framework in Australia that encourages the Australian space sector to be best case responsible actors. And you'll see that when you look at our regulatory framework, that's the way that's really been focused. And then last but not least, it's really recognising the inspiration that space delivers. It's fantastic to see kids are excited about 2 things, right? They're excited about space and they're excited about dinosaurs. And you know what, they forget about dinosaurs. So we need to keep them interested in space, and that's one of our key activities. Next slide, please, Tony. I note that my time's going on, so I'll try and get through the next few slides quickly. One of the things that was important with the strategy was agreeing to 7 priority areas, and you can see them on the screen. One of the things that we're committed to doing is establishing technical roadmaps for how we're going to develop each of these areas in Australia. We've already released the roadmap for communications technologies and services, and we'll be releasing the next 6 over the coming 12 to 18 months. Next slide, please, Tony. This is what our communications technology and services roadmap looks like. Go and have a look at it on our website. We really have a great process for this. We're engaging all of our best technical experts that really understand the capability that exists in Australia, understanding what's a realistic ambition to engage, but also recognise that ambition to grow the sector, uplift our capability, and to leverage our points of advantage. Next slide, please. So what this really means is the strategy sets out really a long-term targeted and strategic vision to grow the sector. We really want to make sure that it's balanced, and we really need to demonstrate how it delivers value to Australia and everyday Australians. Everyone, as everybody here knows, uses space, not just positioning, timing, communication services, those underpinnings that facilitate financial transactions, space capabilities in agriculture, emergency, disaster relief, emergency management, all of those kinds of things. By maximising our coordination and reducing the barriers across the government, but also in the private sector. Next slide, please. And we're doing this by committing to some really sort of major projects as well as some smaller targeted investments. In the panel session later this evening, sorry, my time, later in the morning, your time, I'll talk about our Moon to Mars investment initiative, where we're joining with NASA to give Australian businesses and researchers the opportunity to join with NASA on their ambitious initiative to go return to the Moon and go on to Mars. Next slide, please. We're also targeting sort of key infrastructure that's going to be an enabler for the Australian space sector. On the left, we're investing in a mission control infrastructure. It's a little different to other mission controls. This will be it's run by Australian business for businesses and researchers, and it's intended to be available for a range of things, including small organisations that want to launch their own satellites, so they can focus on delivering their capability without necessarily having to develop their own mission control. And to be a broader service that integrates everything from SSA and space weather and all of those kinds of characteristics. Australian Space Discovery Centre, this really goes to our Inspire pillar. It literally opened yesterday in Adelaide. So if you're ever down in Australia, you can come and have a look at that, and it'll be a fantastic opportunity there. The next one is that we're focusing on leveraging our strengths in robotics, command and control. Sorry, just back on the previous one, Tony. And we've engaged through a grant, a company called Fugro, to establish a robotics command and control. So that is for space robotic missions, but also to develop terrestrially robotic missions for the future. Next slide, please. The other thing is to talk about the space context. So one of the things that the Australian government has recognised is that the space sector has been relatively resilient in going through the pandemic. I realise that Australia is in a much better situation to some other countries, and some people on this call, I'm sure, will be able to understand that. But we still have had an effect, and the Australian government's identified 6 priorities through what they've called the modern manufacturing initiative, or modern manufacturing strategy, I should say. Space manufacturing is one of the 6 priorities associated with that, and I'll talk a bit about that in the panel session this afternoon. Next slide, please, Tony.
We have 1 more minute left. Then we have some questions for you, Adam.
Sure thing. Sounds good. Next slide. The last thing I really wanted to talk about was to link back to Prospero. One of the things that we've recently done as part of our international engagement is to sign the UK-Australia Space Brig, which is a framework for Australian and UK collaboration. And this is the photo there is of the signing event, and you'll see the High Commissioner to Australia there holding one of these little guys, who she named Prospero after that first UK satellite. And the symbolism and really the mechanism here is to create a mechanism to get Australian businesses and researchers talking to each other and connecting and collaborating on common objectives. And the mechanism to get engaged with that, as you're interested, is to talk to our friends at the Australian Trade Commission in the UK, or you can reach out directly to us, and inquiries@space.gov.au is probably the easiest way to do that. And I think the last one is the last slide, Tony. Contact details there, but really, questions? Sorry, 2 things before I finish. Firstly, thank you to Tony and the team for giving me the opportunity to present here. And I'd also like to recognise the support I've had inside the Australian Space Agency to prepare the presentation today. Jana Fabris from my team has been fabulous, particularly today, to finalise this.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that, Adam. We have a couple of questions for you from the audience. Let's see. Hamza Baig, I suppose he's actually working from Australia. There have been a lot of international agreements. What is the strategy to execute them?
Yeah, look, that's Hamza, that's a terrific question. One of the things that our international engagement team is doing is working with those partners to bring forward initiatives that we can execute. And I think one example I'll give is just last week, we had an announcement about the Australian Space Agency working with ESA on the new Norcia, on the establishment of the new Norcia dish. So that announcement was very much that ESA is going to build the new dish there, and you'll see, I guess, more announcements about how Australian businesses and research organisations are going to participate in that and support that. I think the Moon to Mars initiative with NASA is another great example, and I guess without taking too much oxygen in this section, I'll probably talk about that. We've got 3 initiatives that we're progressing about how we're going to join with NASA on the Moon to Mars.
I think we may have lost Adam. Yes, we did lose Adam, sorry. Okay, Adam is going to come back at the next session at around 12 o'clock UK time with the panel on the Space Agency's Corner. We will hear from him a bit more there. We'll have your questions be asked later on today. And I'm going to now move on to the next panel,